Good evening, and thanks for tuning in for my football vlog. Basically, going to call it a football vlog at this point because I'm not exactly sure what this is going to turn into. But I'm going to start off by kind of covering a few interesting things that happen in the World Cup. The World Cup started today. We started with the so the World Cup has started, and today we had Qatar against Ecuador. Probably. It's really difficult to sum up exactly what's going on with this Qatar team. Basically, over the last 20 years, they've been kind of going over they're trying to kind of roll back from this nationalisation idea that they had years ago, where they would have people come to Qatar and essentially become a national citizen and be able to play for Qatar as a result, but they were quite good footballing talents. That didn't necessarily amount to anything back then, but now they can't even do that because FIFA have disbanded that, and as a result, Qatar are not the best. They're going with good intentions. I really like the idea that they've managed to get hold of this coach from the Barcelona B team, who apparently has never coached a match in a football club at all. He's never coached a football club before. But I would expect, I think there are several reasons why today happened like it did, but I do think one of the reasons is just the quality. It's just a lacking quality in the Qatar team, and this is often what you'll find in a World Cup, is you will get a few teams like this. I'm thinking of like Trinidad and Tobago, even kind of Senegal in their early, and a few of the African sides in their early years were not that great compared to a lot of the South American and European teams that were going around at the time. And just this year it happens to be Qatar, and Qatar are a host, and that's what makes this a little bit more difficult to stomach, I think, for a lot of people watching, is that this Qatar team, they're getting this through simply their influence, financial influence over the world, rather than anything to do with their footballing heritage or anything like that. Not to say that necessarily stops anyone from hosting a World Cup. I would say it's absolutely not a reason why, but it's still worth mentioning, I think, at this point, that Qatar are coming from a place that's almost a polar opposite to those teams like Brazil, England, Argentina, who have got such a high footballing heritage, as you'd expect. So I'm just going to go through a few points from the game that happened today. I did watch it. To be honest, I did kind of not fall asleep, but I really kind of lost interest after half time because I did feel like once it went 2-0, the game was done, and that is eventually how it transpired, even though Qatar had a couple of good chances in the second half. So going from the top, then Ecuador had a chance missed in the first 2 minutes, which, or not missed, but they scored, but then they were given offside, which to the naked eye did not look offside at all. And I suppose the problem I have with it is the automated system used just the two players next to each other, which I have a problem with that, because they really should show you the whole line across the field if they're going to prove that someone's offside, because there were other players along that line who were very similarly placed, and if someone was behind them playing them onside, it would have been a goal. Not that at the end it really mattered, but I do think that they need to be careful with that in the future, because if they're going to start just limiting offsides based on a very small proximity of players rather than the whole line, we've got a problem, because that's not how you do offside. You don't become onside, or you don't become offside because you're ahead of the person next to you, but if someone else further down the line is actually ahead of you, you would then be offside. No, you would be onside in that situation. So that was the first couple of minutes, but it seemed pretty clear from the start that Ecuador knew what they wanted to do. They just want to keep the ball, try and play it out to the wings, put balls in the box, play balls in behind the Qatar defence, who just weren't able to control the Ecuador forwards at all. And I thought the energy that Ecuador showed during the game was immense. It was really, really good, and I'll talk a bit about their threat later. But Qatar just couldn't deal with it. They did have a few early touches and looked quite promising on the ball. You could tell there was very, very much a Barcelona influence on what they were trying to do. They had the ball and they were trying to kind of tiki-taka their way across the field. The problem they had was as soon as they got anywhere near a particular bit of pressure, they were probably getting hounded out of the ball 9 times out of 10. And that mainly because of a lack of strength. And that's where the Man Cities and Arsenals of this world have kind of changed the idea of that Barcelona tiki-taka that happened in 2009 through to 2013. And that style has kind of evolved into this semi-tiki-taka, but also easy to progress the ball very quickly up the pitch with pace and power and strength. And that's kind of what Ecuador did to an extent, albeit maybe a bit less flamboyantly. So there is potential in this Qatar team. As much as everyone's going to say, oh, they're absolutely shocking, I do think that if they kept with this idea over the next, say, decade or 2 decades, they could end up with a really good team. And it might end up being a good enough team to be able to at least qualify for major tournaments. Maybe not win them, but probably qualify for them. So, and as far as Qatar in the future is concerned as well, I had another point there and I've completely forgotten, so I'm going to move on. Ecuador are a threat. And I'm going to explain this because we know that Senegal have lost Mane. That's a big, big blow for them. I do think he is their best, probably one of the best attacking players. It would have been the best attacking player at this World Cup, pretty close to it. So losing him is a big blow, and I don't think they're going to be as much of a threat now without them. And that game between Ecuador and Senegal, I have no idea when that's going to be. I have no idea whether it's the next one or the one after that. But that game's going to be huge. I think if Ecuador can win that game, they're through, obviously. But that will mean that they could potentially play England if England win their group, or Wales if Wales win that group. That's a really not terrifying prospect, but it's definitely interesting because I think if there's one kind of team that England struggle against is the Hungary style, where you just kind of flat back 4, 5 in front of them and 1 up front. Ecuador didn't quite play like that formation-wise, but their style was very similar, where they would just get the ball, progress it down the pitch really quickly, play long balls into their strikers, play balls over the top, play balls into the box, rely on set pieces. England will be tested in set pieces if they play against this Ecuador team, and it will be very different to the last time they played Ecuador, where I believe they just completely dominated the ball. And yes, we only won 1-0, but it felt like it should have been 2 or 3. I don't think this England team are kitted out for a team like Ecuador. That's assuming they even get through the group, which I'm not sure they will. So that's kind of one thing, and I think based on this performance, I think Ecuador could go quite deep into the tournament. Although obviously they've got their 2 harder games to come, and I do think that Senegal game is the one they should be getting points from if they're going to get through. I can't see them getting points against Netherlands. I think there were moments in that second half where they weren't clinical and they gave the ball away way too much. And I do think if they do that against the Netherlands, they're going to get roasted. So they'd have to play their best. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, they're clearly a very good team. I love, what's his name now? Enner Valencia coming back and scoring goals again. It's just absolutely brilliant. I'm pretty sure he played for Wigan all those years ago, and what a player. And the header for the second goal was absolutely brilliant. It was just technically absolutely excellent. I know some people might have said he came off the side of his head, but to be honest, it's not it's not a big deal. I did not mind that at all. I think the timing of the header and that the deliveries was the reason why Ecuador won this game today, was because the deliveries into the box were so good in that first half, and they scored from one. They technically scored from another one, although that was ruled out for offside. And one penalty came from another good delivery into the box, which they scored from as well. So, yeah, that's just really impressive. Really impressive. Right. Qatar were starting to go for it a bit more towards the end of the last 10 minutes. I think they did. You start to see the more direct play from Qatar. And to be honest, I think they're going to have to rely on that against Senegal and Netherlands if they're going to get any points or score a goal in this tournament. I don't see them trying to hold teams out defensively because they look shocking at the back. And because they can't keep the ball, it reminds me a lot of Brighton. I think Brighton and maybe kind of post-Guardiola Barcelona, where when they lose the ball, they look a little bit clueless defensively, and the goalkeeper looks a bit suspect. So I would be surprised if they get any points, and I wouldn't be surprised if they scored. I think that's probably going a bit far, but I do think they don't have any semblance of competitiveness in this group, purely because that defence is just so easy to get at. Second half they look better, but I do think it's more because Ecuador just kind of went for chances, but as I say, they weren't clinical. They did give the ball away a lot more, and they looked like in their heads that they'd won the game already. And it was only 2-0. So if Qatar had scored early in the second half, I think they had a really good chance early in the second half, or at the end of the first half. No, the game could have been really different. So I suppose we'll see. They've got, I don't remember who they've got next, but whoever they're playing, I think it's going to be really, really tough. I might actually look up now who they're playing next. So Qatar are playing Senegal and Netherlands are playing Ecuador. So it looks like this group's going to go down to the wire. I would expect this Senegal against Netherlands game is going to be huge. If Netherlands win, then I think Qatar losing to Senegal and Netherlands beating Ecuador would set up that final game between Ecuador and Senegal as a decider. If they win that, whoever wins that obviously goes through. Anyone who spotted a bit of rolling around from the Qatar players at times was a bit much, I think. Yes, they were losing 2-0, they were frustrated, fine. Don't roll around and try and get people booked. Because to be honest, the way they're playing, it's not going to benefit them. It's going to, eventually, it will probably get one of them booked for just play acting. It's not a good idea, especially with the card-happy referee that we had today, who just was not at it. I don't think, in terms of like understanding what the game was like. Clearly, the game today was much more about. It was physical, so I think we should have let a bit more go. But this is the kind of thing we're going to see in this World Cup quite a lot, I reckon. Right, so looking forward, tomorrow we've got 3 games, starting with England against Iran, and it's got to be said, as I look at the fixtures for tomorrow's World Cup games. Senegal against Netherlands and then USA against Wales. It's a big game tomorrow for the home nations. A big day tomorrow for the home nations. England really need to beat Iran. It kind of goes without saying. I think if England aren't beating Iran, I think we can safely say they're not going to be winning the World Cup this year. I do think out of the 3, I think I'm most concerned about Iran. I don't see. I'm not saying that we should easily beat USA and Wales. I can just see us beating them. There is a way of us beating them. It's end of. There's definitely a way. But neither team are going to be, I think, overall massively defensive. This Iran team are very, very defensive. They will play a 5-4-1, or 4-5, or probably more a 4-5-1. But I would expect if England start going into that game with 3 centre backs, they're going to cause problems for themselves because I don't think they're going to be able to outnumber them in the way they want to. It'll rely really heavily on good deliveries into the box, stretching the play out wide, and then being clinical when chances come. Because if England score the first goal, I think the game's unlocked and it's fine. It's very much like talking about Arsenal games over the last 4 months or so. If Arsenal score the first goal in games this season, they've often gone on to win just because they've unlocked the game state is completely in their favour. They can play on the break if they want to, they can just sit back if they want to, it's fine. And they're capable of both and they can win games doing both. With England, it feels quite similar. And it seems a really obvious thing, if you score the good first goal, you're in a good position. Yes, but I do think this England team especially, the way they like to control the ball, the way they like to defend deep, the way they like to I wouldn't even necessarily press that much. So press that much really. They're not going to do that. But I would expect them to be to be wanting to score the first goal and be the aggressor in the game. So that's England Iran. Wales Against USA, I would expect USA to win. Purely, but that's the kind of thing that we've been talking about for the US for years now. Is their team technically is not bad. It's gotten a lot better. I remember when we played them in 2010, and that US team had like Clint Dempsey, Tim Howard. I think it was Tim Howard, and quite a few other players who were good but not amazing. And we knew if you remember back then, the Premier League was the gap was bigger, I think, between the top teams and the bottom teams. These days, it's not anywhere near as big. So I do think with players like Christian Pulisic, who I know hasn't really been great for Chelsea, but he should really be turning up for the US, I think. They should be beating Wales. However, Wales's game plan has done really well at major tournaments in the past. So I would expect this Wales team to do really well, but they're going to have to rely on Gareth Bale, Aaron Ramsey, Joe Ledley. They're gonna have to really rely on those players to turn up. If they don't turn up, it's curtains. I just can't see how, if Gareth Bale doesn't turn up for them, they're not gonna pose a threat. So tomorrow's big for Wales, probably bigger for Wales than it is for England, I think, because England have the capability of beating all three teams in this group. I don't know whether Wales can realistically beat England, and I don't know whether they can realistically guarantee beating Iran. Basically, take any opportunity you get, and I do think this is an opportunity for Wales. Hopefully, we get an England-Wales finishing top two in the group, and that would be amazing. And thankfully, they won't have to play each other until pretty much the final, I believe. So England-Wales final. No, that's we've got a long way to go before we get to that. But I do think this England's Wales, Iran, and USA group is quite interesting. But I don't expect, at least to start with, I don't expect fireworks. But we'll see. I'm really looking forward to watching that game. I think for me, actually, I'm only because I'm busy working tomorrow, so I'm only going to be watching the England-Iran game. I'm going to miss the Senegal and Netherlands and US Wales. So I'll make some notes, and I think I might be able to watch. What time is it? 7 o'clock. I won't be able to watch the USA Wales game either. So I'll probably be putting a video together of all the games tomorrow, but mainly talking about England against Iran, because that's going to be the big game tomorrow. So thank you very much for watching. If you've stayed this far, thank you very much. And I'd like to make these in a kind of a listenable format, so you can put the YouTube video on, but you've just got it on the side and you're just kind of watching it or listening to it while you're doing something else, and that would be amazing. But for now, I'm gonna say goodbye. Have a lovely day, and I will see you tomorrow talking about talking about all the games, talking about Iran, England, USA, Wales, and Senegal, Netherlands.